Well, good day. Welcome to another session of Be Kinetic. It's been a while since we've discussed some of the dynamics of when it comes to creating a resilient safety culture. And it's really is our approach to get the culture we want is we need the buy-in, the commitment, the awareness of our people that they're seeing the hazards around them, they are minimizing the risks, and they are taking action. Unfortunately, is that so many leaders, when it comes to creating a safety culture, is that the emphasis is getting people to do or to have these right behaviors, not understanding, and we covered that in our session 2, of what drives behavior is people's belief systems. Now, to help us with that dynamic is that there are 3 critical functions within the brain. And we talk about our conscious mind, our subconscious mind, and the RAS, which is the reticular activating system. And again, in our section 2, is we spoke on the dynamics of the subconscious. And I would like us just in this session to take a moment to look at the RAS, the reticular activating system. And it does primarily 2 things. So firstly is that we are bombarded with information. So right now is your brain is bombarded with the temperature, the noise around you, just maybe the people, what you are looking at, and it's all of this information, and your brain simply can't process it. And so the RAS, its responsibility is to be able to handle all of this information. So typically what the RAS does is it filters according to a certain criteria, what we call signs, everything that it wants to put on the forefront, what you need to know now, and everything that doesn't meet these criteria then goes to the subconscious, and the brain doesn't process that. So when it comes to safety, it's critical, if we want safety to be on the forefront of people's thinking, is we need to intentionally use these signs to our benefit. Because whether we want to or not, this is the reality of how our brain works. And so if we are passive when it comes to our safety strategy, and we are not intentional about this, it's very possible that people will look at something when it comes to risk or hazards and simply not observe it. And to show you how this works is I use the acronym of S.I.G.N.S, and so the first S has to do with our survival. So anything that puts us in threat or danger immediately is our brain, through the RAS, will bring it to our attention. Now, personally, I don't like snakes. I'm an animal lover, except for snakes. And if I walk into a room, I tell you now, ladies, please forgive me on this one, but there can be Claudia Schiffer, but if there's a snake in that room, I ain't going to see her. I'm just seeing the snake, is because that is the biggest trigger within my thinking, is I'm in harm's way. And so there are times that we need to use the understanding that if we do not work safely, that there are certain hazards that if we are not dealing with them, it escalates the possibility of us being in an incident. And so as leaders, we can use this sign of survival, of bringing the threats, the dangers to people's thinking so that we will take immediate action. The second one is important. So what is important to us? And I don't know if you have had this dynamic, strangely enough, the most important person in your life is typically yourself. And I can prove this to you, is that if you receive a photograph, who's the first person you look for? It's typically yourself. And I'm sure some of you have experienced this, is maybe you at a restaurant, or maybe at some sort of social gathering, and there's a lot of people and a lot of noise, and you're busy talking to someone, and then you overhear your name by someone else. And because your name is important, immediately you start to find out who's talking about me, what is being said. It might be someone totally different. It might not even be your name, but you thought it was your name. That amongst all of that noise, you weren't sharing the conversation. You weren't aware of what was taking place until what was important to you, in this instant, your name, and immediately your brain picks it up and you go, someone is talking about you, and so you start to seek out that information. And I have seen this in several times, is that within meetings that are really important, and let's take a safety meeting where we want to be talking about some of the challenges of the day and how we're going to do it safely, and that's critical conversations to have, but someone will receive an SMS. And it will say maybe your wife is in hospital or the kiddies are sick or whatever it might be. And because your family is really important to you, is in that moment you can be physically seated at that meeting, but you are not there. Is your mind is what is on what is important to you. And in this example, it is on your family. And so how are we making safety important to people? Because they can be walking around, they can be doing their activities, but their mind can be completely on something else. And it's vital for us as leaders to bring the importance of safety to that moment. So we've got our S, we've got our I, and then we've got our G, and that has to do with goals. Is what are our goals? And I'm sure like me is I wanted to buy a new car, and all of a sudden, when I wanted to buy a new car, my car was everywhere. See, I never noticed them before because I didn't have a goal to buy the car. As soon as I wanted to, because it was my goal, I started to notice the car that I was looking for is they just magically appeared. No, it wasn't that they magically appeared, is that my RAS didn't bring it to my attention because I simply didn't need it. What's even worse, and again, I'm sure some of you have experienced this one as well, is I've been going to work down the same road for years, and then I need to buy a new TV, or I need to get a fridge, or replace my tires, whatever it might be, and all of a sudden is the tire shop is there, or the appliance store is there, and it comes to my attention, only to find out is that store has been there for years. Why didn't I see it in the past? Because I didn't need to buy new tires. I didn't need to buy a new fridge or TV. It wasn't a goal. But as soon as I made it a goal, is my RAS started to look for ways to meet that goal. So we've got to be asking ourselves as leaders, is how are we making the importance of safety a goal so that people's brains are looking for ways to stay safe, and you'll find how the brain automatically starts to find out those critical information, starts to highlight these risks, start to show us ways of working safely. Then the next one is the N. And that has to do with whatever is novel, whatever is new and exciting. And I just imagine that if you were in a boardroom meeting and everyone's dressed up and they've got their jackets and their ties on, and a lady walks in and she has a mohawk that is so big and it's just this red and orange and purple. I tell you now, no matter what you are talking about, no matter how important it is at that moment, is we are all going to stop talking and we're going to divert our attention to this novel experience because we simply don't see that on a frequent basis. But now if you live in downtown London, is that there are certain areas of London where punks frequently walk around. And if you live there, maybe you're a punk yourself, is that when someone walks up to you with a mohawk, you don't give it attention because it's not novel, it's not new for you. So we need to be asking ourselves, again, as safety leaders, ambassadors, is how are we making safety novel? How are we making it new and exciting and fresh? And I think this is many times is where we start to lose the plot a little bit, is that I see so many strategies that revolve around this danger aspect of safety. And if you don't work safely, is you're going to be in this incident and you're going to lose your arm or you're going to die, and there's this huge threat. But then I go to companies and I see they have a campaign for safety, but it's 3 years old. And the poster that is meant to be driving the safety campaign, it's faded. It's the sheet itself has started to tear, and it's folded up, and it just speaks that this thing is dead. And then we want to know why people aren't passionate about safety. Is simply, now it may have been a good initiative several years ago, but it's lost its drive, it's lost its energy, is because it's no longer fresh, it's no longer novel. So when we want to make safety on the forefront of people's thinking, is we want to be using these signs. So again, we've got the first S has to do with survival, what is a threat to us. Then the next one is I, what is important. And then we've got our G, which is our goals. And then we've got the N, which has to do with what is novel and fresh and exciting. And then the last S has to do with what is significant to us. And the best way I can explain this is a dear friend of mine, Ramona, is we used to do quite a lot of training out at some of the mines. And, after being on site for a couple of days, you get bored, you want to get off site, and then we would go to some sort of mall. Now, I don't know if it's a male thing, but it's definitely my thing. My goal at being in a mall is to start at the one side and to get to the other side as quick as possible. Ramona had a total different attitude, and she knows that I'm sharing this story, so she won't mind. But she would walk casually through the mall, and many times as I'd be walking ahead of her, and then she would yell at me, "Hey, where are you going?" And I'm going to the other side of the mall, and she goes, "But don't you see the sale sign on shoes?" And no, I missed it altogether. Now, what is interesting is there'd be those big red signs, like, then the white sale word in the middle, and two people in the same mall, in the same shopping area, and she sees the sale on shoes, and I miss it altogether. Why? Because shoes are not significant to me. It doesn't blow my hair back. But for Ramona, she loves shoes. Trust me on that one, I really know. And we not only stopped at the shoe store, we also looked at all the handbags and all the glasses, and spent way too much time, in my opinion. And she noticed all of them, but then had the audacity to walk past the camera store. She didn't even notice it. That infuriated me. Go, how can you miss the camera store? Why? Because cameras and photography and wildlife is significant to me. And so this is a critical factor when it helps create the safety culture that we want, where we want people to be aware of safety, is are we making safety significant to them? Because what is significant to me is not necessarily significant to you. And so I think many times as I interact with the CEO or the plant manager, and really having a good safety record, having this resilient safety culture is really significant to them. But when it comes down to the person at the bottom, is it also significant to them? And if it's not, we need to start to shift their thinking, because if we're not doing this, it's not going to be on the forefront of people's thinking. And so it's a challenge for us, is how we're making safety, bringing the science to the forefront of their thinking, because if we're not, it's simply going to go to their subconscious mind, and they might, like me, see a sale sign and completely miss it. Now, just to wrap this up, is I'll never forget, and again, this is our challenge, is the first time I was working at S.I.G.N.S, and we're working in this open cast pit, and we're driving down in the bakkie, and I tell you now, all of a sudden, there's these Trip 7s and these haul trucks, and it's a huge amount of danger for me. The survival element in my life is massive. Importance is I want to go home to my family, my goal is to stay alive, and I'm holding on to this little, the side rail in the car. My safety belt is tucked in. It is also a novel experience because I'm not used to so many haul trucks around me, and there's all of these dynamics. My adrenaline is up. I'm watching the speedometer that the guy doesn't go above 40. And you know what was interesting is that these signs were so prevalent. But after spending a couple of days in the pit, I was relaxed, I was calm, is that I didn't feel the threat that I did on the first day. Now the question is, did the risk diminish? The ability of those haul trucks to kill me hadn't changed at all, but the sign factor within my thinking had changed significantly. And so when it comes to the signs of safety, the signs that we are using today that are very potent and are bringing about significant change can be completely ineffective tomorrow. And so we see these adverts where we try to threaten people to work safely, where they're in this car crash and the car is all burnt out, and we have these posters and videos, and it may shock someone today, but it isn't going to shock them tomorrow. We talk about how valuable safety is today, but it's not necessary tomorrow. We have a goal of, I'm going to get a Bright Pack and Coke if we get a million hours LTI free rate. That works today, but it's not necessarily going to be tomorrow. And so we constantly need to be playing with these different signs in order to make safety so prominent on people's thinking that they are aware of it, that they are focused. And that's going to take some commitment from us. That's going to take some thinking from our side in order to have the importance and the prevalence that we so want to. So we're going to be chatting a little bit more about how the brain works and how we can use these techniques to our benefit to create the safety culture we're looking for. Until then, be kinetic.